Welcome, class, to POS 370, Social Science Research Methods. Today we will be looking at an article selected by Alex Warren. It is called Cattle Rancher and Conservation Agency Personnel Perceptions of Wildlife Management and Assistance Programs in Alabama, Florida, Georgia, and Mississippi. So first off, let's just start with a couple questions.
Okay.
Do cattle ranchers usually own a lot of land?
Yes.
Yes, right? Are there probably going to be certain species that they prefer to others on their land?
Yeah.
Yeah. Why is that?
Because some they can make money off and others they can't.
Well, there you go. So they make a lot of money off cattle, right?
Yeah.
They could also make money off letting people hunt on their land.
Mm-hmm.
You're probably not gonna make much money off of anything that's a danger to cattle, that kills cattle. So any predators that kill cattle, you're probably not gonna look too favorably on. But ultimately we need to ask cattle ranchers what their perceptions are of wildlife management, right? If you want to understand how cattle ranchers view certain topics, who should you ask?
Cattle ranchers.
Cattle ranchers, very good. Then you have cattle ranchers kind of on one side of this, and then you have conservation agency personnel on the other. They're hired by conservation agencies to administer a lot of government programs protecting wildlife, and also government programs that provide financial incentives to protect wildlife, and also other incentives. Cattle ranchers are human beings too. They appreciate beauty, they appreciate diversity, they appreciate preserving wildlife. So the question becomes, to what degree, right? And so to what degree do cattle ranchers care about preserving wildlife and different types of species? That's going to be a big focus of the research. And then how do the personnel that work at these conservation agencies think cattle ranchers value these programs and species and that type of thing? So it'll be the people that work at these agencies' perceptions of cattle ranchers. Make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so basically they get their sample of cattle ranchers, and at this point in the semester I'm not gonna tell you how they do that, but I guess I will really quickly. There's data out there on who are the cattle ranchers in these different states, and they actually pay for that sampling frame, which is interesting. So they pay for that sampling frame, and then they sample within that, and then they wind up getting the sample, right? And then they contact the people in the sample, and they find out a fair number of them don't ranch anymore, right? And so they're left with a little over 1,000 that do still ranch, so they're active ranchers. Then for personnel and conservation agencies, they wind up with about 50 people that work in these conservation agencies, right? Okay? So, question number one. Where is their sample size larger, among cattle ranchers or personnel at conservation agencies?
Cattle ranchers.
Cattle ranchers, a lot larger. So, what are their estimates going to be more accurate for?
Ranchers.
Ranchers, yeah, exactly. It's just the way statistics works. So, in Table 1, which I'll describe and then I'll show it to you, these are perceptions of ranchers and agencies' personnel's perceptions of ranchers regarding wildlife benefits on ranches in the southeastern United States, 2009. Okay, and so there were ordered response categories. 1 equals not a benefit. 2 equals a slight benefit. 3, moderate benefit. 4, serious benefit. And 5, extreme benefit. So it goes from 1, not a benefit, to 5, extreme benefit. Make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Then, it amazes me how clear this thing can get when you get it close enough. Okay, so let's just look at question number 1. Ranchers maintain healthy land and environment. Remember, it goes 1, not a benefit, to 5, extreme benefit. So they average 3.4. What do you think? High, low?
It seems about right. A little high.
Yeah, maintain a healthy land environment. Well, who are we to tell cattle ranchers what their views are, right?
Yeah.
So, remember, 3 was moderate benefit, 4 was serious benefit. So they're kind of right in between. Okay, now on that first one, compare the agency response. 3.5. That was their perception of cattle ranchers. So did they guess where cattle ranchers were pretty accurately on that one?
Yes.
Yeah, they did. Okay, now, remember, different researchers will use different methods. They'll use different approaches, right?
Mm-hmm.
Depending on the data they have, the research design, what they're exploring, if they're testing any hypotheses, right? And so, could the researchers just compared the average among ranchers to the average among agencies, and then seeing if there was a statistically significant difference?
Yes.
Yeah, they could have, right? But these guys did something different. They did factor analysis, right? And they kind of lumped those first questions together. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, so go down intrinsic benefits there, Michael. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, see how at 0.536, then there's a big drop-off?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay, so basically what they're doing is there's when you're identifying which questions are loading on the same factor, you as a researcher have to kind of decide the cutoff.
Okay.
Right? So Michael, where would you pick the cutoff? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Question number 7?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, because you see that's about where it drops. So let's see. This is hard to see on here. What's question number 7 on here? I'm just going to read it.
Okay.
So let's just start down. I'll tell you when we hit number 7. Maintain healthy land and environment. Are there intrinsic benefits to that? Yes. Conservation. Yeah. Enjoyment for future generations. Yeah. Family wildlife watching. Oh, that's nice. Family hunting opportunities. Yeah, that's great. Crop and pasture pollination. family fishing opportunities. All those are intrinsic. Then conduct guided hunts. That's number 8. What's the difference? So let's read 7. Family fishing opportunities. To conduct guided hunts. What's the biggest difference between those two?
You have to conduct it, I guess.
Yeah, but you're going to charge people.
Oh.
Okay. Right? You're not going to charge your daughter to take her fishing, right? Yeah. So, lease land to others for hunting, income from mitigation banking, and then the last one, right? So, it basically went from those intrinsic benefits, the beauty, the fishing, all that preserving the land, to economic benefits, right? So, if you can read that, it's kind of hard to read. The factor 1, intrinsic benefits, you can tell there starts to be a big difference between question 7 and question 8.
Yeah.
Make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay? And so, and this is their research design, is not mine, right? So, basically what they do is they say, is there a statistically significant difference between agencies and ranchers on this intrinsic benefit dimension and not each one of these individual questions?
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So, in other words, in ways, they're kind of lumping all 7 of those questions together. Right?
Yeah.
And so, if you check the footnotes, which are totally small on here, it says, yeah. There's not a lot of difference there. But in the second one, the second column, they say rancher and agency factor scores are different at a p-value of 0.001. Right?
Yeah.
So this is kind of a complicated graph and or chart, and Alex pointed that out in his table. He's like, what's the deal with this factor analysis? I'm trying to explain it here because it is kind of complicated.
Okay.
So, Michael, where do you see a little d? Look at the top of the second.
Oh, factor economic benefits. There's a little D.
Factor 2 economic benefits,
Yeah, rancher and agency factor score is different.
Yeah. See, so you have to go down to the footnotes. And so the point of table 1 is when it comes to the intrinsic benefits, agencies perceived ranchers' attitudes pretty accurately. But when it came to the economic benefits, agencies did not perceive rancher attitudes very accurately. Right?
Yeah.
Why is that a concern?
Because that'll affect all kinds of stuff. How conservation workers address these economic issues. Whether they'll think the ranchers will put up a fight or not.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's the thing. And again, that's one of kind of... In all these articles, there's a lot of information, right? in a well-written, peer-reviewed journal article, there is a lot of information. Sometimes you gotta find the most important findings within it, right? So, as you look, and sorry to do this to the rest of the, well, I'll just do it to you guys. Look at those bottom rancher perceptions, guys. Conduct guided tours. How important is that to him on a scale of 1 to 5?
1.1.
Okay, that's so. In other words, not a benefit. Mm-hmm. Not interested, right? Conduct guided hunts. Well, anyway, I'll just let the ranchers speak for themselves. Not interested, right? Ecotourism enterprises. What's the score there for ranchers?
1.1.
Interested or not interested?
Not interested.
Not interested. Right? Lease land to others for hunting.
Not interested.
Not interested. I mean, you know, 1 is as low as you can go, right? This is not interested. And income from mitigation banking.
Not interested.
Not interested. Whereas you look at the agencies on those questions, agency personnel, conduct guided tours. Oh, yeah, ranchers are going to like that. Higher. Ecotourism. Yeah, ranchers, well, a little higher. They still know ranchers aren't going to be thrilled with these programs, but they're much higher than ranchers on this scale. The real income from mitigation, banking, 2.9. That's a lot higher, right? So, basically what it boils down to is these economic opportunities. Ranchers aren't interested in. Guess what ranchers probably care most about?
Cattle?
Ranching.
Oh.
Exactly. And so, you know, what's the paperwork involved? How much government involvement is gonna occur? How many people are gonna be on my property? Am I gonna have to get permission to use my land the way I want to use my land if I participate in these programs?
Yeah.
You know, and you know the agency personnel, they're misperceiving how ranchers feel about these programs. Ranchers in general. I mean, all the ranchers I knew were out west. You know, when you know, I lived in Utah and Idaho, out west, and they were very independent minded, and they didn't like a whole lot of government involvement in how they were doing things. Except, of course, when they were using BLM land, Bureau of Land Management, but we won't go into that. They use a lot of BLM land. Anyway, this was done in the East. This was Alabama, Florida, Georgia, and Mississippi. So, all right. There's different. Okay, this is wildlife problems. Do you perceive these to be a problem? 1's not a problem. To 5, extreme problem. Right? So, wildlife problem. You look. Can we get that on there? It's hard. Yeah. But you start looking. Feed damage. Equipment damage. Crop damage. Spread disease. Tree damage. Constraints from endangered species regulations, burrows or tunnels in the field, fence damage. Farmers hate fixing fences, man. Water control system damage. spread unwanted plants, livestock predation, and that they hate any predators, right? So, yeah, this type of thing. So anyway, they look, and there's a difference between rancher and agency scores on these things. Yeah, here it looks like, just eyeballing it looks like the agency people view it more as a problem than ranchers, which is interesting. Anyway, then they basically go down and do the same thing for other things. They look at different species, what you should save, turkeys, quails, that type of thing. And other ways of managing the property or programs that they're participating in. But that's the main research design, right? Was what we saw in table 1, and they just do it over and over for a number of questions. They don't see if there's a statistically significant difference between ranchers and agency personnel on just this one question. Instead, they used factor analysis. Mm-hmm. They saw which questions loaded on the same factor, which questions were related, and then as they looked at all those questions together, they said, is there a difference between what ranchers want, or the perception of ranchers and the perception of the agency personnel? So you get the research design? Mm-hmm. So why do you suppose they just didn't go down each individual question and see if there's a difference between the two?
They probably couldn't find one, really, with such a small number of conservation workers, just 50 or whatever.
Oh, that there's a statistically significant difference?
Yeah.
So you get more statistical leverage by lumping a number of similar questions together than if you treated them in isolation?
Yeah.
That's a very good answer.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, also, they ask a lot of questions here. The other thing is lumping them into meaningful groups. If you're familiar with factor analysis, should make this a little easier to understand and make meaningful generalizations rather than each individual question on its own, right? So through factor analysis, they find questions that load on the same factor, that are related, that seem to be tapping into the same dimension, and then they see is there a difference between rancher perceptions and agency personnel on this dimension. Make sense? Yeah. And so what they come down to is rancher and agency responses were similar for many wildlife benefits and attitudes toward wildlife, yet agency personnel overestimated rancher perceptions of wildlife problems and the economic benefits of wildlife enterprises. So agency personnel overestimated rancher perceptions of wildlife problems. So they thought ranchers would get all worked up about wildlife eating their feed, having tunnels on the property, that type of thing. And actually, ranchers seem to take it in stride pretty well. Just another day on the job. They seem to be a pretty easygoing group.
Yeah.
And which for conservationists is really promising, right? Because again, the perception is out there. Cattle ranchers are going to be really frustrated with wildlife on their property, when in reality they took it in stride. Yeah. But the other thing, agency personnel overestimated rancher perceptions of the economic benefits of wildlife enterprises, right? Again, ranchers probably are like, how much is this program going to pay me? How much paperwork's going to be involved? How much my time is it going to take up? I'd rather not. Whereas agency personnel are like, don't you understand? It's additional X number of dollars a year. I don't care. Yeah. Do you know, on a very personal note, we'll end with, well, anyway, Alex, cattle rancher and conservation agency personnel perceptions of wildlife management and assistance programs in Alabama, Florida, Georgia, and Mississippi. Oh, we'll end with a couple easy ones. Michael.
Yeah.
Why do you suppose they chose Alabama, Florida, Georgia, and Mississippi? Where do you think these researchers are from?
The South.
Absolutely. Out of those, where do you bet they're from?
Georgia.
Florida.
Oh.
Yeah, the two authors are in the Department of Wildlife Ecology and Conservation, University of Florida. You know, so again, it goes back to a very common concern in the social sciences is you're not necessarily selecting a sample that's representative of the entire nation. Instead, hey, we'll study the Southeast. Why? Because that's where they are. And again, these sound like excellent scholars. It was very solid research. Looks like they did a very good job. But it's a limitation, right? Is ranchers, cattle ranchers in other areas of the country may have different perceptions. Yeah. And again, now why'd you pick the Southeast? The honest answer is because that's where we are.
Yeah.
Right. But in the paper, when they're putting it up for review, they'll make some argument about why the Southeast is the ideal place to study cattle rancher perceptions because of all the biodiversity and, you know. Yeah, they'll come up with a reason. Yeah, that's about it. So, any last minute questions?
No.
All right. Well, take care, everybody, and hope you're doing well. Remember, write up 10 pages total of reviews on these. Some can be page and a half, some 2, some shorter, but I need a total of 10 pages, and they're due Wednesday, April 22nd. So, get them done. Okay, take care, guys. Hope you're doing well. Bye-bye.